Welcome everyone. We're gonna wait a minute while everyone comes in. Welcome everyone. We're just gonna listen to this nice song for a minute while everyone gathers here. All right. Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. I think we're ready to get started at 6:02, and we may hopefully have some more folks joining us, but thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Andy Wellspring. I'm a member of the Coalition to Save Jackson Forest and also the Mendo Coast Surge chapter. I'm showing up for racial justice. And thanks for coming to tonight's Pomo Land Back webinar. Before we get started, I wanted to let you all know, unfortunately, Priscilla Hunter, our keynote speaker and tribal elder of the Coyote Valley Band of Pomo Indians, is not feeling very well today. And so she's not with us. She's not joining us this evening. So I'm sorry to say that, but we do have other folks from the coalition, including Matt Simmons, who is an attorney at EPIC, which stands for the Environmental Protection and Information Center. They're based in Arcata, and Matt is a huge, huge member of the coalition to save Jackson. So really glad that Matt's joining us tonight. And I'm also here with Megan Wolf from Surge, and also Heather Ringo, who's helping us with tech support. So thank you for that, Heather. All right. Next slide. So we like to start our gatherings just being conscious of the fact that for those of us who live here in Mendocino County, we are living on the rightful and unceded lands of various tribes. Unceded as in there were no treaties. There was no agreement that this land is no longer theirs. And so these is what we call unceded lands where we're living. And these include Kato tribes, Northern and Central Pomo people, Northern and Coast Yuki people. And people from these tribes are still here. And our group, Surge, and also the coalition as a whole, strives to support their sovereignty as nations within so-called California. And the Coalition to Save Jackson Demonstration State Forest includes the Coyote Valley Band of Pomo Indians, Environmental Protection Information Center, EPIC, the Mendocino Trail Stewards, Surge Mendo Coast, Bay Area Coalition for Headwaters, longstanding coalition there, has joined us, Redwood Nation Earth First, the Mama Tree Network, and actually many other groups, which you'll be able to see all their logos on our petition that we'll show you shortly. We work alongside each other. We come together for the common goal of changing the management of JDSF. We want to reorient this away from commercial logging as the mandate and what the state says this forest is for, to indigenous land management. just briefly about our organization, SURGE. It stands for Showing Up for Racial Justice. We are a local chapter of a national organization that works across the, actually not national, it's across the whole continent. There's many chapters in Canada as well. And the idea is that it's a group of white folks who want to follow the lead of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color and support their campaigns. And so we are here supporting the Coyote Valley Band of Pomo Indians and the other tribes in the area who are looking for justice on their land. But we also think, like the first bullet point here you can see on the slide, we organize out of mutual interest. I don't feel that I can be free until everyone is free, right? So it's not just that we're supporting them for their sake, but it's actually that, you know, in order to be able to be full humans and live our best lives, like we need to live in a world without oppression. And at the same time, climate change is a racial justice issue. It's affecting people of color more, whereas white people are predominantly, or wealthy people, are causing climate change to a greater degree. And on top of that, traditional ecological knowledge is the only way that we're going to slow climate change, right? So, which does affect us all. So there's a lot at stake here. And if you'd like to learn more and connect with us, you can email us, surgemendocoast@gmail.com. We'd love to talk with you and work together.
Thanks, Andy. Now we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat, everybody at home. We would love for if you feel comfortable sharing your name and pronouns if you feel comfortable with that. And where are you based? Whose land are you on? Heather's going to put in the chat a link to nativelandcalifornia.ca. If you're not familiar with whose land you're on, that you can look that up. But let's take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat. We're going to be keeping everyone. My cat is currently trying to walk over my keyboard, so I'm a little distracted. Sorry. We're going to be keeping everyone muted tonight. We've got a lot of folks, but please talk to us in the chat. The chat's a great thing. So introduce yourself.
All right, I'm seeing folks from Pomo land here in the coast or in Willits. Also, the Sean Ohlone land. Zoe, welcome. And Heather on Patwin Swisunes. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing that one right, I'm sure. Araceli on Patwin land. Matt up north, Weot land. Northern Pomo. Welcome, Orville. Wow, coming in all the way from Hopi lands. Welcome.
It's so wonderful to see local folks and folks from all over on here. Like within the coalition, there are a lot of folks, of course, based in Mendocino County, but there are also a lot of us all over the place. And also Mendocino County is big, so some of us live all over. Even though we're in the same county, we live far away from each other. So it's really wonderful to see how many people are supporting this movement from all over the place. So thanks, everybody. It's really great to see who all's here in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and keep going and give a little background because I know not everyone here has maybe been to one of the events and rallies before, or been to one of these webinars before. So I want to give a little background on the movement, but feel free to keep introducing yourself in the chat if you haven't had a chance to yet, or if you're still typing your response, feel free to do that. So Jackson Demonstration State Forest, we also refer to it as JDSF, because Jackson Demonstration State Forest is a mouthful, is a 48,652 acre state-owned coast redwood forest located in Mendocino County. There's a difference between a state park and a demonstration state forest. It's not a state park. The demonstration part is that it's supposed to be demonstrating logging. So it's very different, but it is state-owned coast redwood forest. And it's a big area. CAL FIRE manages the land as an industrial timberland, routinely cutting large old redwoods. Our coalition, the Save Jackson State Forest Coalition, works to change the mandate of JDSF from industrial logging to indigenous land management. So that is like our big goal, is to change the mandate and to have tribal co-management, so that we move away from industrial logging and move to indigenous land management. You can see the top picture on the left shows a photo from Jackson Forest of what the industrial logging looks like, the destruction from it. In 2020, Governor Newsom directed all state agencies to co-manage state lands with local Native American tribes and seek opportunities to return state lands to Native American tribes. The Coyote Valley Band of Pomo Indians is seeking equal co-management with equal decision-making authorities in JDSF. This provides an opportunity for the state to return management of state lands that were seized during the California genocide to its original stewards. So Jackson Forest could be a place for tribes to demonstrate indigenous land management. Jackson Forest is also the home of sites that are sacred to the Northern Pomo and Coast Yuki peoples, and logging has damaged those sites in the past and continues to threaten them. Conserving JDSF will allow Native Americans to protect, visit, and restore their sacred sites. I wanted to share, recently, we had a rally just this Friday at the Little Red Schoolhouse in Jackson Forest. It's right in the middle of Highway 20. You may have seen it if you're people who are in Mendocino County a lot. It's right by Camp 20. And this rally came about because CAL FIRE and Jackson Forest had sent in their like email thing that they care about historical sites. Look at this school that they restored, because look how much they care about history and historical sites. But there are sacred Pomo cultural sites in Jackson Forest. Those are also historical sites, but they want to destroy those. They have plans to put roads through them and cut down trees in them. So they say they care about historical sites, but I guess that just means they only care about the white people historical sites. So the rally on Friday was to bring attention to that. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that here. Oh, here we go.
Right, and again, for those folks who just joined us after we started, welcome, thanks for being here. And unfortunately, Priscilla Hunter, a tribal elder and the former chairwoman of the tribe and currently the tribal historic preservation officer, is not able to be with us tonight because she's not feeling so well. So unfortunately, we don't have Priscilla as a speaker tonight to share with us as we usually do. So please stay tuned for another opportunity to hear from her. But in any case, one of the reasons why the coalition and Surge are so feel so confident about what we're trying to do here and change the mission in Jackson is because Priscilla has been leading for decades the Intertribal Sinkyone Wilderness Council, and you should look them up because they have over 5,000 acres so far that really has been returned to tribal control, and management, and this is a coalition. The Intertribal Council is 10 tribes from this North Coast area, Mendocino and Humboldt counties, and it's a really beautiful project that they have going on. And so we believe that their leadership will also would make positive changes for JDSF as well. So next time you can hear from Priscilla.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And Heather just put in the chat, we wanted to share an article from Priscilla about her perspective on Jackson Forest. And if you have not read this, I really recommend, really highly request that anyone who hasn't read this particular piece of writing take some time to read it later tonight, because it's really important and really powerful. Even if you've been in the movement for a bit, I like to go back and revisit it just to like get recentered on the focus, and her words are really powerful. So if you haven't read that, please take some time to read it later. And Heather also put a link to the Sinkyone.org so you can learn about the Wilderness Council and that awesomeness. So I highly recommend checking that out as well. All right. So the coalition, we have a website, savejackson.org, and we also encourage folks to, if you feel inclined, to donate to the coalition. When we are putting on rallies, when we're like doing all the things that we do, the funds that get donated here help make it happen. And so if you are able to support us in a monetary way, that would be amazing. And you can do that at savejackson.org. The link is in the chat, and it's also there all the time. So if you're not able to donate right now, it's always there. There's a big old button on the top right. And we really appreciate your support, because it does take funds to run a movement. So you can also share the website around and encourage other people to donate. We've also gotten donations from other organizations. Maybe if you are a part of an environmental organization or some other organization that is passionate about the same things that the coalition is, maybe see if they're interested in donating towards us. We really appreciate that support.
Okay, so as a little bit of introduction to Matt Simmons, the lawyer from EPIC, will be speaking soon. I wanted to share with you all one of our big campaigns here for the winter is we have a goal of 10,000 signatures on this petition. And we spent a lot of time kind of boiling down our goals and ideas and whatnot into this petition. And I think it came out really beautifully. And if you take the time to read all the links on this petition, you'll really know quite a lot about what's going on with our movement and like all the different facets and goals that we have right now. So just to share some of it, which is, I'm not going to read this whole thing, and this isn't even the whole petition. This is about half of the words on the petition. But some of our main goals that we're advocating for is that first and foremost, we need to replace the current legislative mandate for JDSF, because the law right now actually says that commercial logging is required. Like that's part of what's happening in this forest. And was set in place in the 1940s. And times have changed, and it's really important to have a new mandate. So we have a link there to another document that's really well done by Marie Jones, some of you might know, and really highlights the need for that. Also, in the meantime, while that is happening, this longer term project, right, to change the law in California, but in the meantime, we need to declare a moratorium on logging. There have been forest protectors making a people's moratorium, essentially, a moratorium on logging through direct action, right? And actually stopping the logging. And that has worked. Like for the most part, there have been some, CAL FIRE has gotten through sometimes and has done some work, particularly in Red Tail timber harvest plan. But what we're asking for is a moratorium, like no more of this planning until the tribe and the state are able to really come up with a co-management agreement that reflects the tribal and environmental concerns, right? So we don't want to see the situation where currently the tribe and the state are trying to negotiate these things, but the state is still moving forward on plans, right? That makes for bad faith negotiations, right? So we're asking for good faith negotiations. And in particular, again, the cultural sites. The cultural sites need to be protected. There's a report done by the state of California, commissioned by the state of California back in 1999. It's called the Betts Commission Report. They came to JDSF. They determined that there are tons of cultural sites that are being destroyed by the routine logging. And they said, all of this logging should stop until you can really catalog, survey, document all of the sites here so that they can be protected. And that has been ignored by both CAL FIRE and by the larger entity, the Board of Forestry of the state of California. And so they have their own recommendations to stop this and protect these sites, and they have not been following it. So we stand with the tribe in calling for this. Lastly, another point on the petition, but not least important, California states they have a goal of preserving 30% of the state's lands by the year 2030. That's called 30 by 30 goal, right? And so the reason for that is to avert the worst case scenario, climate change, right? This is California joining many countries in the world who are making the same pledge. And it's, so here we are sitting at the redwood forest, which sequesters carbon so quickly. It's probably the best way you could sequester carbon in the state of California. And so we're saying, if you're serious about this, you know, averting climate change, fully preserve Jackson. And that way you can help meet your 30 by 30 goal, right? So these are our points on our petition. And I really invite you to sign it, and please share it to your friends and anyone else. And if you can join us on Monday, this coming Monday, January 30th at 6:30 p.m., we're going to have a volunteer meeting, and we're going to strategize about how to get this petition out all across the state, because it is a state forest currently. And so it really is of interest and could be of interest to people no matter where they live in California. So if you'd like to join us, again, 6:30 on, and you can email us at sergemendocos@gmail.com to join us and help strategize about getting this petition out far and wide. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. And we're going to go over that again about the volunteer meeting. And we have a form that you can fill out, and then I'll just send you the email for Monday. So we're going to come back to that. So don't worry if you're like, I didn't get all that info. We're going to circle back to that. And want to talk a little bit about Red Tail right before we headed over to Matt in a second. But basically, Jackson Forest is really big, as we mentioned, and they propose these timber harvest plans, which are basically areas of the forest that they sell the harvest of. And one of the harvest plans is the Red Tail one. And basically, CAL FIRE likes to talk about fire prevention, but the Red Tail timber harvest plan is in the older forest development zone of JDSF, where the supposed goal is to retain forest canopy created by large trees. Large trees provide shade and retain moisture. Large trees prevent fires. We also know the large trees are really good at sequestering carbon. The trees in these photos should never have been cut, even according to CAL FIRE's own guidelines. yet were cut despite community resistance. These are photos from the timber taken in the red tail timber harvest plan. So you can see that these are really big old trees. And it's just wild that they're in their own guidelines say that they shouldn't be doing this. So with that, I'm now going to introduce Matt, our amazing attorney from Epic, such a wonderful part of the coalition. And I want to give a little bio on Matt. Matt graduated from UCLA. Oops, sorry, I just moved a thing, so now I can't see it. Sorry. Matt graduated from UCLA School of Law in May 2020 with specializations in environmental law and public interest law. At Epic, Matt is focused on using his law degree to make life as difficult as possible for people who want to harm the environment. Whether it's private companies, misguided state agencies, or the federal government, no matter who's in charge, Matt is ready to use every legal tool at his disposal to defend this corner of the planet. And when he's not working, Matt can be found enjoying the places he protects, usually on a hike or at the beach. So I'm going to stop sharing in a second, and then we will spotlight Matt, and we'll love to hear from you.
Hey, everyone. And thank you, Megan and Andy, for all that wonderful information. Yeah, so I guess I'll start with a little bit about Epic, and then I was asked to give an update on the Eagle Nest at Potter Valley. So I will do that, and then I'm going to jump into talking about Jackson. So Epic is a nonprofit. We defend Northwest California's environments and forests. We've existed since 1977, and we've been really actively involved in, a lot of environmental battles that have happened on the North Coast and Northwest California. I've been at Epic since I graduated law school, and I found the work incredibly rewarding. This Jackson Demonstration State Forest work, working with other Native nations and tribes, and in order to defend their territories, defending our national forests that are controlled by the federal government, defending private forests that are privately owned, and state forests like Jackson. It's been really wonderful. So I don't know how much of a recap on the Eagle Nest tree I should give, but I think some of you are probably aware that there was a Eagle Nest tree in Potter Valley, California, that was going to get cut down by PG&E earlier this month. Basically, PG&E felt that the tree was about to fall down on one of their power lines, and they wanted to cut it down as quickly as possible. They got a permit to do so from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they were ready to do so like early January. And thanks to some amazing protesters and eagle defenders and folks doing direct action, they were prevented from doing that until, Chairman Michael Hunter of the Coyote Valley Band of Pomo Indians put out a call for consultation on the decision to remove the Eagle Nest. Epic and Center for Biological Diversity, another environmental nonprofit, also put out statements and wrote letters as lawyers saying that they shouldn't cut down the Eagle Nest. And then the Eagles returned, right? And that changed the dynamic of whether or not it was legal to cut this nest tree down. So I'm happy to say that PG&E has stated publicly that they will not cut the nest tree down during this nesting season. So until August 1st, while the Eagles are still there, and that we are in conversations with them about the future of this tree, and that I think it's looking really good. And I can't give you more details than that, and I apologize. Sometimes lawyers have to be a little bit cagey, but as soon as I can, I'm going to share this information with everyone, and I will spread it as far and wide as I can. Yeah, so that's an update on the Eagle Nest tree. Sorry for the diversion from Jackson. So I guess the purpose of my talk is sort of to talk about the legal landscape of Jackson. And honestly, it's a weird place in California. It's unlike basically every other forest in California. And I'll try to explain why. California has a lot of national forests, right? Mendocino National Forest, Klamath National Forest. Those are managed by the feds. Joe Biden, Donald Trump, whoever's in charge at the time decides what's going on there. So that's one problem. Then you've got privately owned forest lands. Most of these are owned by these like large corporations now. So Mendocino Redwood Company, Humboldt Redwood Company, there's a ton of them. And those are owned obviously by the private landowners, but they're regulated by CAL FIRE. People hear CAL FIRE and they think of firefighting, and that's about 80% of what they do. But the other 20% has to do with timber and regulating timber. And then there are these state forests like Jackson, and Jackson is run by CAL FIRE and the Board of Forestry, like it's a private timber forest, right? So it's a state-owned land that California decides to treat like a private forest so that they can demonstrate how to do private forestry, right? And if that sounds really weird and odd to you, it's because this decision to treat the forest like this was written in 1947, and the state of California had wildly different values in 1947 than even our, not particularly radical leaders in the legislature have today, right? Every time I point this out to someone, even, a very sort of buttoned up, like serious person, they go, wow, that does seem a little bit weird that we still have this going on. And so because Jackson is regulated like it's private land, it has to follow the rules for private forests in California. It's always a question as a lawyer of how much to delve into the details versus how much to sort of skim over the top. Very, very, very basically, in California, when you do a project that impacts the environment, you have to follow a law called the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. Basically, all this law says is that you have to say how you're harming the environment before you do it. It does not say you cannot harm the environment. Obviously, people do things every day that harm the environment, but you have to know what you're doing. It's a leap before you look law, right? They want you to be able to explain how what you're doing will harm the environment. It was passed back in 1970, and right after it was passed, the California timber owners and forestry world was like, oh, hell no, there is no way we are doing that. And so they got another law passed called the California Forest Practice Act in 1973. And the Forest Practice Act said, look, they don't have to do CEQA. They're going to do an easier thing called a timber harvest plan, right? And Andy mentioned that name. The timber harvest plan is both the document that says what they're going to do in a logging project, and then it's also the area that they're logging in. And so we sometimes use it interchangeably to mean both of those things, and it does mean both of those things. So they get easier CEQA basically in these timber harvest plans. So already CEQA is not good enough, right? It doesn't protect the environment really. And then the loggers get an even easier version. And so CAL FIRE gets an even easier version in Jackson, with the added twist that because CAL FIRE is the agency responsible for regulating timber, CAL FIRE both writes the plan and then reads the plan and says like, okay, good, check the box. You did a good job writing this plan. Yeah, exactly, Heather. So EPIC, since we were founded in 1977, has one of our main things we've litigated over is exactly what CAL FIRE and private timber companies are required to do under the Forest Practice Act. If you look up EPIC in case law, every time our name comes up, it's almost always about a private forest owner trying to do something really shady and EPIC suing them and saying, no, you have to do better than that, right? There's a pretty famous case called EPIC v. Johnson that went to the California Supreme Court, and it held a lot of things, but one of the things it held was, no, you actually do have to think about cumulative impacts. Cumulative impacts are, multiple projects that are next to each other or happen over time. They add up to more, the sum is greater than, what is it? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I can't remember it's a compounding effect when they all go together. Sorry, I'm saying a lot of information quickly to you guys. So Epic v. Johnson happens and they're like, oh, okay, you actually do have to do that. But then they say, oh, well, we don't have to do this other thing. We don't have to consider alternatives, right? So under CEQA, you're supposed to think about alternative things you could have done instead of doing the project you want to do. And all the timber owners say, we don't have to do that. And they go, no, you actually do have to do a little bit of alternatives analysis. So Epic's been fighting that fight for 50 years and winning a lot of the time, honestly. It's pretty satisfying that CAL FIRE keeps trying to pull the same tricks and keeps losing in court. But Jackson is special because it's not just us making the argument that, you know, a private landowner should have to follow all the rules. It's the state, CAL FIRE, should have to follow its own rules, right? So I'll talk a little bit about what we've done specifically in this campaign. So when I was first contacted about Jackson Demonstration State Forest, and, you know, I only started working at Epic in 2020, so I'm new to this work. But when I was first contacted, there were already several timber harvest plans that were approved by CAL FIRE, right? They'd been written, they'd gone through their review process, and they were approved. That includes Redtail. Like this picture behind me is of the Redtail timber harvest plan. Casper 500, which has still not been cut down. Soda Gulch, which has still not been cut down. A couple others. Legally, as a lawyer, it's hard to get at the ones that are already approved. They can only be reopened in like extraordinary circumstances. But there were a bunch of timber harvest plans that were still sort of coming down the pike, right? They hadn't been approved yet. They were about to come up for review. They were, you know, you could read them online and submit public comments if you wanted to. And one of the first things Epic did was really organize a fight to get as many people as possible to make public comments, you know, saying they weren't in favor of the plan, pointing out problems with the plan, because that's how CEQA and the Forest Practice Act works, is the public is allowed to review plans and say, hey, you messed up here. Hey, what about this? Hey, did you think of this? And if they poke enough holes in the plan, it can make it legally vulnerable, I would say, right? You know, it's not, obviously it's not foolproof, but the agency is really supposed to look at all your comments and say, okay, we've thought about that, we've thought about that, we've thought about that. They're actually required to respond to your comments. And so Jackson and CAL FIRE, which was used to getting like basically zero comments. So like on Casper 500, Nancy, CEQA is California, so C, Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so they have to respond to all your public comments. And if they don't respond well, you can file a lawsuit, a CEQA lawsuit, saying that they didn't do a good enough job responding. So Epic and a whole ton of members of the public all wrote comments on those plans that were under review and hadn't been approved yet. And we waited, right? I was all ready to file a lawsuit if they approved those plans. I was so ready to file a lawsuit if they approved those plans. I was excited about it. I was fresh out of law school. You know, I was like, this is gonna be my first lawsuit here at Epic. This is great. And then they didn't approve them for months and months and months and months. And, you know, they just kept saying like, yeah, we're still reading comments. You guys sent us a lot. Oh yeah, that was what I was trying to say. So like Redtail and Casper 500 got like one comment each. And then all of a sudden they were getting like hundreds of comments because so many concerned citizens were writing it. It slows them down when they have to read more comments than they were used to. So then finally, and I'm totally forgetting the timeline of this, but CAL FIRE announces that they're pulling all those plans that they had proposed. Now, I wouldn't say that that was just because of public comment, right? It was also because of the Coyote Valley Band of Pomo Indians and their consultation with the state. I think that was an incredibly important factor as well. But I think that combined with direct action from protesters and public comment from the public and lawyers being around hanging in the wings, all of us coming together, all of us working towards a common goal, got CAL FIRE to back down on those future plans, at least temporarily. So since then, I have mostly focused on, I don't just do lawyer things. I also try to help with the media. I also try to help write, work for the movement. I've been thinking a lot about, if I was rewriting the mandate for this forest and the forest management plan, what I would include, because that is something CAL FIRE has pledged to do, is update their forest management plan. We've talked about the drive to change legislation. I've thought a lot about that. So there's so many different angles here, but the thing I want everyone in this room to walk away from this from is that one of the things that this movement was able to do was get a lot of folks writing public comments on timber harvest plans. And it's possible that CAL FIRE will start proposing them again in the future, right? I don't know exactly when, but it's not impossible that CAL FIRE is going to try to cut some more trees down. It's sort of what they like to do. And so one of the things I hope you all do is sign up to get updates from the coalition, because if that does happen, we will absolutely email you and let you know how you can comment, how, we can help you read through these, hundreds of pages of documents and get you to the right, page. And yeah, so that was sort of the crux of my talk. If you're interested in other work that EPIC does, I encourage you to check out our website. It's wildcalifornia.org. Because we don't just work in Jackson, right? We work up and down the North Coast. And yeah, Andy, was there anything I did not say that you wanted me to say? I'm happy to talk about other things, but that was sort of those were all my notes.
Thanks, Matt. That was wonderful. I think that definitely covered everything. And I'm not sure to what extent people want to do questions or whatnot, because that maybe could be more specific for folks, but thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I think you did a great job of making that accessible for people who don't know. And also I learned more, and I've been like in the coalition for a bit. You did such a good job of making that nice and clear. We have a couple of other things that I want to say. But if people want to ask questions in the chat and there's time after, maybe Matt can answer if he wants.
I have a call at 7, but I am happy to answer questions until 7.
Brilliant. Thanks. Okay, let me just go over the last bit then.
Yeah, maybe folks, while Megan is going to cover a last slide about volunteering, if you want to write a question in the chat, that would be wonderful to have them there.
Yeah. So Andy mentioned this earlier, and I want to go over it again, that we need volunteers. It takes a lot of people to have a movement, and we need more people. So we're having a volunteer meeting on Monday on Zoom, and if you fill out this volunteer sign-up form that's going to go in the chat, or maybe I can't see the chat from here. Yes, it's already in the chat. If you fill out the form, I'll be sending out the Zoom link to everybody who's filled out that form. And we're mostly going to be focusing on things people can help with online. So you don't need to be local for that meeting. And then we're going to have a couple of in-person days. We've been doing a lot of like rallies and protests and things over the last year and a half and stuff. We try to use the same signs. Like you can see Larry here with a sign here in this photo. We try to use the same signs over and over because we care about reusing things and stuff, but they don't last forever and they're starting to get really beat up. And so we need to make some new signs. And also I personally really want to get so we have like a storage of signs inland and a storage of signs on the coast, because we have like a good amount of us who live inland in Mendocino and a good amount of us who live on the coast. It'd be nice to have it so we have a bunch on both sides so we're ready whenever we need them. We have signs. So we're going to have a couple of days. We're going to have one in Fort Bragg on February 12th at Bain Rouge Park, and one in Willits at Breck Grove Park. And if you fill out the volunteer sign-up form, I'll send you this information so you don't have to write it all down right now. So yeah, also on the volunteer form, there's a spot for if you're interested in the direct action side of things. I can then forward your contact info to being on that list for when there'll be direct action trainings. But this is focused on the non-direct action work for the most part. So yeah, so that's on Monday at 6:30 on Zoom, and then a couple of days in person. If you just fill out that form, then I'll send you this info. So you don't have to like write it all down right now. And then as Matt mentioned, stay connected with us. There's two different email lists and websites because the coalition is the savejackson.org. It has the most information and stuff, but there's also information on pomolandback.com, and you can go to either of those websites and join the email newsletter to stay in the loop about what's going on. So if you're not already on one of those lists, make sure you get on one of those lists. So like, as you said, when we need people to like comment on this stuff, sign the petition, show up for a rally, we need folks, then you can be in the loop on what's going on. So yeah, I think that was everything. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. And were there any questions for Matt?
I have one question, Matt, for you. Just thinking about the mandate, right, and the state law, and you talked about how a lot of people in California say, oh, that does seem to be a very antiquated law from 1947. What do you think is a way forward for that?
Yeah, so if you guys go on the Pomo Land Back website, there's a video that was put together, and part of that video is from a visit to the forest, where a lot of folks gathered in the forest and prayed and talked about what we wanted to see for the future. And one of the guests of that visit was Vice Chairman Frankie Myers of the Yurok tribe. The Yurok tribe are from up here in Humboldt and Delaware counties. They manage a lot of their ancestral forests and are currently in the process of buying back a lot of their ancestral forest and managing it. And if you watch that video, you can see him say, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, let's make this a forest to demonstrate traditional ecological knowledge and traditional forest management, right? Because it's, you know, I like our state parks and our national parks, but they have problems too, right? They also have removed indigenous people from the land and have their own problems. So as long as we're starting over and, you know, creating something new here in California, and, you know, if we want to keep the name demonstration in there somewhere, let's do that. Let's demonstrate traditional land management, you know, cultural burning, tending, gathering, all these things that, you know, indigenous people, native nations have been doing here since time immemorial and need to continue to do here, particularly with climate change. I think Jackson and all of our state forests have the potential to be, you know, the place where that starts, right? And I say starts because I want to see that spread to all lands in California and the nation. And, you know, that's obviously, that's one part of it, right? There's scientific research that can also happen in Jackson. There's, you know, I want to see people be able to recreate there and mountain bike and hike and gather mushrooms, right? Like, it doesn't have to be one thing or the other, especially if you stop doing the sort of destructive commercial logging, right? Because if we grow the forest and sort of grow the pie, we can all get more out of it together. And so that's my dream for Jackson and for our state forests, is that they'll demonstrate all those other things besides logging. To Cayenne, here, I'm gonna put my email address in the chat. And folks can email me there, and I'm busy, so I don't always respond immediately, but I do check it, and I do respond to folks from the public who are reaching out to Epic for help with anything that Epic does. So please feel free to email me, and I would love to meet more of you and help answer more questions offline, or I guess still online, but not in the Zoom chat.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. I really, really appreciated everything that you had to say and sharing your knowledge with us. You take such complicated things and make it so easy to understand. I appreciate. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. Stay in touch, join our email lists, and stay tuned and join our movement. Fill out the volunteer form if you want to get involved. If you're, if you already, sorry, I have a cat again. If you are not someone who has the time and bandwidth to fully join our movement as a volunteer, please stay on the email list, join the email list. That way you can be in the loop and you can come to rallies, you can sign the petitions. There are things that you can do when you're able, but if you're someone who's like, I want to get more involved, fill out the form. And if you filled out the form in the past and I haven't contacted you, I'm working on it, we're getting it moving. So I will be sending the info about Monday and the info about the days in Fort Bragg and Willits later this month. And thank you, Matt and Andy and Heather and everyone who came today.